Oh no. This just all went off the rails. So I had everything set up and then I nudged this I'm using a new USB hub and I nudged it and everything disconnected. I'm gonna need just a little bit of a mic check here. Let me make sure I'm still connected to the same audio source because I'm hoping it just reconnected on its own. Yeah, that looks like it's okay. Hey, y'all. Welcome to an abomination of a podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. See, it's regular that I joke about and I talk about like, hey, it's tough running a podcast and like I have these like audio gremlins and my setup is way too complex and I'm trying to figure it out. So I got this new USB hub, thinking like, hey, this would be great. I can simplify, I can streamline, I can more easily switch between like my giant workstation or maybe I want to work off my laptop. It's really nice working off of an ARM powered laptop in a hot room instead of running this massive workstation with a kilowatt power supply. And now I've just discovered one of the critical flaws in that scenario is apparently if I lightly tap one of the cables on this USB hub, the whole thing disconnects. So that's going to go. I'm going to be very gentle with my desk right now. And I also have to just forewarn, I'm hoping that what I'm doing here with this mic and some of my fancy software and stuff can minimize this. But our condo is doing some massive roof repairs, renovations. It's like a whole process. And let me tell you, getting an HOA and getting HOA members to agree on things like roofing has just been a constant battle. Like they're in the process of doing the repair as we speak, and we're still arguing internally in the HOA, like who should do what or how should we pay for it? And you're like, they're already doing the work. We should probably figure out how to pay for it. Hilariously, they started this gig last week and they were going all the way around, just kind of tearing up the roof and then reapplying like the basic parts. And now they're doing the shingles. I was so excited because they were doing the shingles and making it all the way around. And on Friday, they stopped right there. So Monday morning, they started doing work about 30 minutes ago right there. And then they're just going to slowly trek over this unit and the last unit, which means I'm definitely going to be hearing banging and thudding and stapling and nailing and all this other stuff. Apologies if that comes through on the podcast. Michael C. So, what officially distinguishes a podcast from a live stream if we were making a Venn diagram? Well, I mean, it's some podcasts are pre-recorded, and so they wouldn't be live streams, and some live streams aren't intended for scheduled distribution and publishing, so they wouldn't be podcasts. So a podcast can be a live stream, and a live stream can be a podcast, but they don't have to be the same thing. Scoop! Hey, I'm seeing some great names in this chat already, and we have an absolutely wild list of stories and links to get through today. So I've already wasted enough time. I'm going to jump into some housekeeping. Of course, I hope everybody out there had a lovely weekend. You got a little downtime, got some time to unplug. You did something fun, played some sports, hung out at the pool. It's summer, it's hot, it's kind of lovely right now. It's like good hot in Southern California. It's a little more humid than I would like, but hopefully everyone out there is doing well. And yeah, we've got wild. I was putting the show notes together this morning, and like it was just link after link after link. This is literally half of the total number of stories that I considered, and I still have one of the busiest shows that I've had in a couple weeks. Colin Murphy, everyone's a critic, even your roofers. It was hilarious. They were making it all the way through. I was so excited. They're going to be done on Friday. This is going to be great. They stopped right there. They stopped right above my unit. No. Okay. So, we're going to knock out some housekeeping. Last week was busy. Lots of stuff came out. I'm just gonna stay in screen share as we jump through all this stuff here. Here, I'm gonna scroll down. No, actually, you know what? I'm gonna start right where I was. I had a plan. I'm gonna stick to the plan. So first up, this was early access on the Patreon. We talked about this last week. The Sony WH-1000 XM6 Part 3. So I had a 3-part video series looking at these new headphones from Sony, and part 3 is now published publicly. Part 1 was how I made the XM6 sound better. Part 2 was a battle against a budget headphone, a sub $100 headphone versus the more expensive Sonys. And then in part 3, I just wanted to take a look at, philosophically, what happens when we spend more than what Sony is charging on the XM6. And again, it's not like for like. So this is, even though these are both Bluetooth headphones, I would say that these are very different experiences and that the price is sort of reflective of a difference in application. But you'll have to weigh in on that video. You tell me if maybe I got this all wrong, or maybe I'm trying to be too precious with my comparisons. That's up to you. Drop those comments. Then also published publicly another article that was in early access, OnePlus Buds 4 review. What else can we say? Spending some time with the new buds from OnePlus and watching better and better audio technologies keep falling to lower and lower prices. So OnePlus is actually creating a small problem for themselves where so much of the experience on the Buds 4 is pulled from the Buds 3 Pro, the more expensive headphones. So it gets finer and finer and finer. Why would you spend more on the Pros? You got to get really specific. And I think this is just kind of one of those interesting things about Bluetooth audio in general is we're getting incredible experiences for kind of the mid-pack pricing. So this is an article. And what's funny, you know how I've been complaining a lot about like YouTube algorithms and you know, like my audio videos don't get any traffic. I put out a new video on a pair of headphones now, even though that's kind of the stuff that I built my channel on. YouTube kills that stuff. It just dies. And it's to me, it's that evidence that YouTube is not really a good discovery platform anymore. Because we know there are tons of people that love watching videos about headphones, and some of the headphones I talk about are a little more niche or a little more obscure, but still rank for some kind of search engine optimization, some kind of SEO. But it seems like they look at my subscriber base, they look at a ton of inactive channels that are still subscribed to my channel, they send my videos to people like that who probably started following me from Pocket Now or from phone reviews, and then they go, well, see, no one wants to watch your video, so we're not going to send it to people who are interested in... See, YouTube has all the data. YouTube could take one of our videos and then just serve it to an audience that is into that kind of topic. But that's not, I mean, when I look at my stats and when I look at what's going on, obviously I've got a sample size of one YouTuber to look at for granular data, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening. Now, what's hilarious is throughout all of this, like, AI is ripping off our content, and my website stats have dropped significantly over the last 2 years. 2 articles are blowing up right now. My Pixel Buds review and my OnePlus Buds review. The most recent earbuds from Google and from OnePlus have more than tripled my website traffic in the last month. Now, I was a pretty low bar. My website does not get a lot of traffic these days, but it's those 2 articles all by themselves. So it is an infuriating and maddening aspect of trying to produce content and manage all of your socials and look at all of your stats and keep up with your audience and also write scripts and also shoot and edit and render and upload video and make wacky thumbnails. Like, all of this is maddening because there's no consistency in the experience as algorithms change what they think audiences should see. Not what audiences are into. You do not go to YouTube and get recommendations on what you are into. You go to YouTube and YouTube tries to keep you on their site for as long as they can. There's a fundamental difference in that strategy. So OnePlus Buds 4. Maybe I need to like start making all my reviews written articles again. So that way this can live on Patreon for a week and then I can send it to somegadgetguy.com and that's how we'll get over YouTube. And then this one was huge. Actually, I'm going to skip that. This one was huge also. I teased this a while back. I did a video comparison between the Vivo X200 Ultra and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. The title is Xiaomi Ultra versus Vivo Ultra main cameras, bigger sensor or longer lens. And this video I had to kind of take back to analysis. So I did a preview version of this on Patreon and I got some phenomenal comments on it. Like some really in-depth. Georgie is in the chat right now. I don't know if I saw John, if John Gao was also in the chat. But Georgie, the hammering is right over my head. So please pardon if I start getting really distracted. Yeah. They dropped these incredible comments talking about different sensor technologies and crop zoom and what happens to our phone cameras. And it made me reconsider some of my analysis from the main video. So I re-looked at my samples. I shot a couple new samples and then I saw a couple different trends that helped explain what I was seeing in the original video. So the revised video is now public. You can find that on YouTube. You can also find it on the Patreon. But that refined analysis would not have happened if I hadn't had good interaction, good conversation, some chatter, some back and forth, some polite debate, right? There's a way that we can disagree in comments on posts and not be savage idiots. These three gentlemen were engaged in this conversation and it helped my video out tremendously. So Xiaomi Ultra versus Vivo Ultra. Now you can catch that public. It's on the Patreon, it's on the YouTube, and it's on somegadgetguy.com. Yeah, Georgie, there's no way around it, man. So I even went to my wireless mic to try and keep it right on my chest. I tried using my SM57, my just regular dynamic mic, and they're hammering so hard that it's shaking the entire structure, which rattles my desk and then shakes the microphone. So it's way worse when I go to the microphone that's usually better at minimizing noise coming in from outside. And lastly, this one was kind of a beautiful part 2 to an interview. Let me pull this up right here. Hashtag right to repair is only the first step. Grading companies on repair with Nathan Proctor of US Perg. This is another sit-down interview. I was honored. I was really excited to sit down with the folks at Perg again, Public Interest Research Group. When you pick up something like a Chromebook and you're happy that that Chromebook now gets 10 years of software support, when you pick up a phone and you're like, hey, it's not good enough that this phone only has 4 years of software support. When you pick up a pair of headphones and something breaks on those headphones and you're able to get a repair guide to fix those headphones, you should write a thank you letter to the folks at US Perg, the US Public Interest Research Group. Those are the folks that have been fighting at the state level to give us right to repair, better accessibility. They're really working on climate goals. They're working on sustainability. Beyond right to repair, they're also behind a campaign called Designed to Last. And if you remember, I had an interview with one of the directors of that campaign, Lucas Gutterman, and that was a brilliant conversation. I would wholeheartedly recommend watching that interview because they had just published a report that they called the e-waste graveyard, which is kind of depressing because that's all the stuff that's already dead because companies aren't doing a good job with software support or something goes end of life and you're like, well, but it still works. And the company says, no, it doesn't anymore. We decided it doesn't work anymore. And you're just stuck with garbage. It's bad for the environment, it's bad for the economy, and it's just really stinking annoying. But that's depressing. E-waste graveyard is all the stuff that's already dead. What Nathan Proctor has been working on at US Perg is a report called Leaders and Laggards. And this is a report where they grade how well companies are complying on right to repair legislation. We just saw a massive win in Texas. Texas is a big deal. Texas is the first red state to approve a pretty comprehensive right to repair law. That's kind of a huge win for the momentum on this topic. And again, at the low level, at like the individual level, this shouldn't really be a red or blue issue. I bought this thing, I should be able to fix it, and there's a law that says you have to give me a repair guide and components to fix the thing I bought from you. Sounds to me like that should appeal to everybody. But again, we've got like a lot of massive corporations out there that are trying to politicize this and make it a blue issue or a red issue, or, oh, you think it's gonna be too hard for businesses to make money if they fix their stuff. But Leaders and Laggards has already affected change in the camera industry. The first report they put out bumped a lot of camera manufacturers into making more of their repair guides and components accessible for people to fix their stuff, or at least get that to a repair shop. So repair shops had access to those materials. And now they put out a report where the report that they've just published covers smartphones, tablets, laptops, and game consoles. So this is their first sort of stab looking at a lot of the consumer electronics that we talk about on this channel. So you can catch the interview, and Nathan is funny and witty and charming, and I really enjoy talking to him. But then also the report is just kind of eye-opening, like who's doing really well. I was really happy to see some products on there that I felt were businesses doing, companies doing business in an appropriate fashion. But it was also kind of surprising who really flopped on that. Some really disappointing entries on that list. You know, like companies just straight up failing, just nothing to offer, no support. There's just nothing you can do. You bought this thing from us, but it's basically just designed to go right into the landfill. So Leaders and Laggards and the folks at US Perg, and you can catch that interview on the YouTube. It's also a standalone podcast, and I'd highly recommend catching both the conversation I had with Lucas Gutterman and the conversation that I had here with Nathan Proctor. I said lastly, but there is one more biggie. This one is a proper big deal. Let me pull this screen share up one more time. The Vivo X200 Ultra camera review is finally live. I flew through putting this together, and it still took a couple weeks. So this phone was on loan from my buddy TK Bay. I helped subsidize part of the cost of this phone just so I could kind of spend some time with it. I treated him to the camera kit so that he could live with this, because I'm pretty sure the Vivo is going to be his like main production camera. But he let me take first crack at it, and now the phone is properly over on his channel, and he's going to do the rest of the sort of phone reviewing and the follow-ups and stuff like that. But this is a 36-minute video that does kind of depend a little on my review of the X200 Pro. So the X200 Pro and the X200 Ultra are very similar in a lot of ways. They make a lot of similar decisions with software and with apps and with processing, but the X200 Ultra has a different cocktail of hardware. So this review, it's still in my normal format, but there's a part of this I'm kind of abbreviating certain parts of the video to talk about the changes that I see versus the X200 Pro. And then I spend a long time, this is a big deal for Vivo, first-party accessories, cases, and lens adapters, and telephoto zoom lenses. And this is Vivo taking their camera philosophy seriously to a point that I don't think we've ever seen the company approach before. And it really gives Xiaomi a run for their money, not necessarily just phone to phone, but in platform to platform. Like, accessories matter. It makes the phone look more complete. It makes the phone look cooler. There's an expectation you can do more with the phone when you see a giant honking telephoto lens sticking out the back of the phone. The lens weighs more than the phone, and it's got Zeiss branding, and it's got a proper tripod mount. That makes you feel like, hey, this this phone should be capable of more than what we normally talk about with phone stuff. So it to me is a very, very big deal. Simon says, Hypno, I loved the X200 Ultra review. And Simon says, Hypno, I loved that post, that comment that you just posted there. So it's just mutual affection. It's good times. So everything. I mean that was the main rundown there as we're talking. Man, that hammering, it's right above my head. They made it all the way around just in time for me to start the show. Hey folks, this is gonna be a bit of a slog because we've got a lot to talk about. And I thought, well, maybe I could try postponing it, or maybe we could try and do the podcast tomorrow. And I literally can't. I'm on deadline for a couple of really big projects, and I couldn't stray. So let me take a drink of coffee, and we're gonna jump into the news proper, and we're just gonna muscle through. It's it's a nice little chorus of percussion sound right above my head. Okay. So everything that we're going to talk about, all of the housekeeping, all of the articles, all the show notes, all the links, you'll be able to find that on this week's blog post on somegadgetguy.com, which is enjoying a surge of traffic thanks to some earbud reviews. So yeah, you don't want to miss that. You want to be on the cool kids team, checking out the cool kids stuff. We're going to kick off with a very I'm some of these stories I'm going to try and blitz through. I know I always say that and then we get hung up, but let me know in the comments like what we want to sort of chat out more. This is coming from Luis Rijo at PPC Land. Let me go ahead and screen share this. Microsoft can't protect French data from US government access. Company admits under oath that American authorities can demand European citizen information despite security promises. Then in the article, Microsoft France's legal director conceded under sworn testimony that the company cannot guarantee French citizen data stored in EU data centers remains protected from US agency access. The June 10th, 2025 French Senate hearing marked a significant moment in European digital sovereignty discussions as Microsoft executives addressed concerns over extraterritorial data access. This is a very big deal. We've kind of built the internet around these handshake agreements. I mean, there's not really been a lot that's been tactically enforceable. I make this product in this country and someone else is using the product in another country, and we're very upset when the product sends my data to the country that it was manufactured in, right? All the xenophobia, usually our ire is pointed at China. This is a Chinese phone and they're sending my data to a Chinese cloud. So we have started these regulations where we say, hey, we need to keep data in this country. And the EU is kind of at the forefront of that style of regulation, of that kind of legislation. But it's still not as enforceable as I think a lot of privacy experts would want. So here is the situation. Microsoft is an American company, and the way that our current presidential administration is gutting our own regulatory agencies and is kind of regulatory capturing all of these agencies to basically be arms of the administration. We're in a situation now where Microsoft, you're an American company, you do business in America, so anything you do, we should have access to, is the argument being made by politicians here in the United States. And of course, that's going to ruffle some feathers in the EU, because we believe in this idea that the internet sort of conforms to the country that it's in. If there are laws about obscenity in one place, then web businesses have to do business in a different way in that place. If they have different protections, like we have Section 230 of the CDA, well, in America, you can do this. And so your website is allowed to do that. And if you try to move to Brazil, they have different laws about protections for web companies. That's just the way we've arranged it. So now, this is gonna be kind of a big hit for Microsoft. This is gonna be a rough position for Microsoft to be in. They're an American company; they have to comply with their government's actions. But we're already seeing a trend in the EU anyway, where countries are getting rid of Microsoft services and products. We've mentioned this on several, like Belgium is one of them. I think Germany is looking at changes. What was it? Was it Denmark? I can't remember. Someone in the chat, please remind me. But they've already started getting rid of Microsoft operating systems and Microsoft Office solutions. So they're moving government computers over to Linux and they're using LibreOffice. This is Microsoft's bread and butter, especially at a time where Microsoft is gutting developers, cutting thousands of jobs. There was another article, and I cut it from the show notes. Just a recently laid off Microsoft employee saying like, we're getting laid off because Microsoft has to move the needle a little bit on stock prices because of the insane amount of money that they're spending on AI. Well, you lose millions and millions and millions of potential customers for your AI products if you testify before a French Senate inquiry that we can't safeguard your data. Who's going to do business with Microsoft as a business grade solutions platform if Microsoft can't safeguard this web traffic, this cloud data, if the AI is just sucking up all of your information, that AI consuming tons of electricity and burning through millions of gallons of fresh water, that is an expensive machine to operate. And now they're going to lose a ton of government customers because of it. This is absolutely something we need to keep an eye on because this entire AI platform, this entire AI strategy is a giant albatross around the necks of all of these corporations. And to me, this is another potential bubble burst that could tank the economy like the housing market did. We're pouring billions of dollars into infrastructure. And then Microsoft says, well, maybe we don't want to build that data center. Okay, well, I guess we'll just get all that money back from all of the companies and all of the local governments and the municipalities and the taxpayers, everybody who put money into this. Now it's just an empty lot. Once this starts to deflate, if it happens too quickly, it's going to pull just like the housing market. Because there's real estate involved, there's servers involved, there's electricity and infrastructure and utilities involved, there are tax deals involved. Everything is sort of stacked up. It's built on layers. So let's watch. I would really like for it to not play out in that as a worst case scenario, but it seems like these corporations are listening to investors and shareholders who only seem impressed by another AI headline. And that's how we're going to make all our money. And that's how we can fire all the humans in our company and just buy an AI. I did have to, someone was asking legit on Mastodon last week. I mean, like, hey, I've got to do a presentation for my company about why we should be concerned to incorporate AI tools into our workflow. And a bunch of people were like, oh, the human dignity, and oh, you check all its mistakes, and AIs hallucinate. And I went point blank and said, cloud-based AI services are still not a profitable business solution. These companies are investing billions of dollars in infrastructure that they're not making profits on. And so let's say you really incorporate AI tools into your workflow. What happens when that company starts raising the prices on you? Do you untangle yourself from the AI at an expense, or do you just keep paying higher and higher and higher costs because cloud AI is an unsustainable business model? It's great. Hey, Jeff Rowe saying, good morning, Juan and everyone. Good morning, Jeff Rowe. Michael C saying, oh man, I'm seriously losing my patience with Microsoft. The thing is, I think this is Microsoft actually in an untenable position. Microsoft can lobby and Microsoft can try and influence politicians, but at the end of the day, they're kind of forced to comply with whatever our administration says is the law of the day. This is why we want regulators that aren't immediately under the thumb of the executive branch. This is why we want a strong FTC, a strong FCC. This is why we want government to be little pockets of power and not consolidated power. This is why we make fun of people who act like Trump is somehow an effective president, because he's trying to be an authoritarian. He's trying to be a dictator. This is not what we want. And so even when we're frustrated with Microsoft over all the other things that they're doing that I think are pants on head stupid, this is one of the outcomes. Now an American business, an American-based business, they're a global force now in the industry, are going to be forced to comply with orders that are probably not totally legal. But that's what we voted into office. Moving right along. Another interesting court case. This one's been resolved, and I think it'll be. I'm gonna get real precious with this. This one is. I didn't realize how carved up this market was, and this article kind of lit up something that I hadn't noticed before. This is coming by way of Bloomberg. Who wrote this up? Samuel Stolten over at Bloomberg. Corning dodges EU antitrust clash with Gorilla Glass deal. The European Commission said in a statement on Friday that the U.S. glass firm had agreed to waive all exclusive dealing clauses in all its current agreements in order to allay EU concerns. Corning's oh, where did I thought there was another. So yeah, Corning makes Gorilla Glass. Gorilla Glass is sort of the name brand for a lot of these fancy glass that goes on the front of our smartphone screens. Brussels regulators previously alleged that Corning illegally excluded rival producers from large segments of the market, cutting customer choice, increasing prices, and stifling innovation to the detriment of consumers. So a bunch of companies make these different types of chemical glass, and they're more durable, they're more drop resistant, they're more scratch resistant. But it sounds like Corning was engaged with their manufacturing partners like Apple and Samsung and all these other brands to say, if you want to use us, you have to use us. And prices get weird, or we'll cut our supply if we start to see that maybe you're entertaining using a competitor. But what's been funny is, as we've seen recently, a lot of other manufacturers are starting to go to other suppliers. So Corning had sort of priced themselves into a position, but as other smartphone components have gotten more expensive, we're starting to see like scratch-resistant glass with no name brand. Or what's the other one? Dragontail? I think Dragontail is one of the other name brands on this kind of chemically treated glass solution. So Corning was already in this kind of niche of the market and trying to dominate it, but that vice grip did kind of squeeze a few other manufacturers out the sides. And now I think like in this market where we might consider one component being superior to another, I don't know. I mean, like, it's tough to say when you look around and you still see all these phones with cracked and busted screens. You're like, okay, well, was that Corning? At some point, glass is going to break, right? Glass is going to scratch, glass is going to crack. So maybe if I see like a OnePlus with a cracked screen, it's not necessarily like, oh, they used inferior glass. Maybe that would have still cracked if it was Gorilla Glass. But, also in the article, they mention Corning, Gorilla Glass found in devices sold by Samsung, Google, Sony, Lenovo, and a close partner, a long-standing partnership with iPhone. But the EU's probe revealed the cover glass products developed by Corning for Apple were not part of the same market where the conduct is alleged to have occurred. So all these other companies, Corning putting the squeeze on. But Apple, oh, well, that's different. Even when it's like an antitrust situation, even when it's an anti-competition situation, somehow these companies still like, oh, but Apple, you could do whatever you want. That's fine. Samsung, you've got to do business with us. Sony, you've got to do business with us. If you want to say Corning Gorilla Glass, you can't entertain doing business with competitors. Oh, Apple, you don't have to use Gorilla Glass branding. It's fine. From Michael C. Right. Like, I don't know how much you can do to glass to make it indestructible. I don't know how much of this is sort of placebo or has been independently verified. So I think it's like IP ratings. I gave up on a lot of techies after the HTC 10. You have to remember at that time, it was still pretty novel to have not only IP ratings listed at all, but to have the really, really high ones like IP67. Oh my gosh, that is a big number. 67? That's huge IPs. 67 IPs? Whoa. So at the time, a lot of techies were treating IP67 like it was some kind of waterproofness. Like, this device is a submarine, which is not the case at all. So the HTC 10 comes out, and it's still one of my all-time favorite phones. The HTC 10, I think, was probably the best of that metal-bodied HTC design. HTC One M7 definitely turned heads, showed HTC could be a force in this premium space. The One M8, funky camera silliness, but was a really pretty phone that really sculpted metal back. HTC One M9 suffered all of the same problems that every other manufacturer did with that terrible, terrible chip from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 810. The HTC 10 arrives, it's got a beautiful Snapdragon 820, it's got those hard chamfered edges, those flat panels running the sides of the phone and angles on the phone, a great single camera solution, but a great camera on the back, and HTC with a metal body phone listed IP53. They spent the money for the certifications to test their phones and to get a proper IP rating, and that was great. IP53 is decently dust resistant and is decently splash resistant. You want to try and dunk it in a bathtub, but it's a metal body phone and it is a listed water resistance that you know what to expect. You know, hey, if I want my HTC 10 to go underwater, man, right there, right there. If I want my HTC 10 to go underwater, I'd need some kind of submergible case that could really seal it up. But you knew what the expectations were with that IP rating. But of course, a whole bunch of tryhards, and especially the Samsung popularity nerds out there. Oh, but IP53 not good enough. It needs to be better. Why isn't it IP67? Because that means it's waterproof. And now we got a bunch of companies that won't even list the IP rating again. And I really do believe it's because whenever it's not the biggest number, a bunch of tech nerds go, oh, that's the reason I don't like it. It's not that I'm a Samsung knight. It's that it's the merit. It's just, it needs to be better. It needs to be better, bro. It needs to be bigger number. I mean, yeah, we used to have IP67. Now I have IP6. I have 68 IPs now. I can't do 67 IP, bro. Bro, it's too few IPs. You need one more IP. Right above my head. This is so awful. So anyway, for Michael C's comment there, when we talk about these different glass manufacturers, the situation is very similar to that, in my opinion. When you look at different durable glass solutions, one of the things that really I don't really think gets discussed enough, when you change glass, you can make it more durable for drops, or you can make it more resistant to scratching. But it's really difficult to do both because the harder you make it, the more brittle it gets. So you might be able to make something that you'd never need to worry about a screen protector for scratches, but then you take a corner drop and the thing just immediately like decompresses, like ripples spiderweb cracks all the way through that glass. And there are different flavors of Gorilla Glass. Like Victus is different than like Gorilla Glass 5. There are different solutions for different applications. Instead, we're looking at it, oh, Gorilla Glass 5 must be better than Gorilla Glass 4. And yes, in some ways. We keep just trying to boil everything down into the simplest one number or one brand name or this is the bestest, but that's not how any of this stuff works. And especially like case in point, look at watches. Classical timepieces, smartwatches. What have we largely moved to for a device that lives on your wrist that's going to get smacked against doors and door handles and cars and like raked against stuff in your pocket and just generally abused while it's poking out of your wrist? Inexpensive watches use some kind of Gorilla Glass, but the more expensive premium, we love hearing sapphire. This OnePlus watch that I've got on my wrist now is a steel case. Steel sounds strong. Metal, steel. And a sapphire crystal display. That makes it inherently more scratch resistant because sapphire is second only to diamond in terms of hardness. I am not a material scientist. That's just how I understand it all. So we want the right material for the right application. It's not as simple as this one is betterer than all the others because it's one number bigger. And now this is why I immediately give up on so many conversations on social media. It's largely why I gave up on like the Android communities on Reddit. They think they know something because they memorized a number, but they don't understand what that number actually represents. So it's fun. We have fun. Colin Murphy, I thought it was the cost of certification for IP ratings. So, Colin, I want you to just take that a step further because you're totally right. There is a significant cost in certifying your phone. So what happened to HTC? They paid those costs and they let their consumers know, they let their customers know responsibly what the IP rating was. And then they got savaged by techies because the IP rating wasn't good enough. So let's say OnePlus does the same thing, right? OnePlus spent years not certifying their phones with an IP rating, but just suggesting, we've tested our own phones internally and we think it's close to IP67. But what if they took the time and the money and the effort and it turned out it was like IP65? Well, that's not good enough. 65 IPs, I need 67 IPs at least. So they spent all that money for techies to complain that the number is not big enough. To me, it goes hand in hand. There is a cost associated with it, and if we're having to rein in costs, maybe we sacrifice this IP certification. But if the IP certification was going to come back and it was only good and not the bestest IP number, then that hurts you way more. Instead of consumers knowing, oh, well, yeah, I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. My phone could take a dunk in a pool. I just can't let it sit there for a half hour. I just got to pull it out of the water after a minute or two. Oh, darn. Like a lot of the damage is like, well, I dropped it and then it landed in a puddle. Okay, well, I got about a minute to pull this phone out of the puddle. What am I going to do? I needed a half hour to decide I should pull this phone out of this puddle. I spilled a glass of milk on my dining room table and now I need to wash this phone off. If only I could submerge it for more than 20 minutes to clean the milk off this phone. You understand? Like, that's the actual lifestyle practicality of an IP rating versus the misunderstood value of that IP number. And that's what costs us, like techies fixated on this like spec sheet memorization. That's how you know a phone is gooder, is because it's got a Samsung label on it. I mean, you know a phone is gooder because it has more IPs, and we can't win. It should just be every device has some kind of certification process, and now the consumer knows these are the limits of the device. But that's not what we have, because then that works against the marketing. Goat V8, spot on. We need transparent aluminum or whatever to become commercially available. We just need Scotty from Star Trek. He's talking to his mouse. Hello, computer. I didn't realize my mouse cable wouldn't reach up to my face. JJ4884, has anyone made a clear plastic that is not glass but not as tacky as the old capacitive plastic? I don't know. That's a really good question. If someone can answer JJ4884, like what would be a good example of maybe something acrylic? But the problem with an acrylic is that it can be pretty brittle too. So plastics that need to feel glass-like can sometimes feel glass-like in the bad ways too. So yeah, if someone has done that, I know in phones, usually what happens is it's a flexible plastic. Like the Moto Shatter Shield was the forerunner to a lot of our bendy folding phones. So here's a folding phone and it opens and there's plastic and you can see this big old crease in the middle of your content. And I hate folding phones now these days. But Moto used to just put plastic on their main phone screen because it was way more durable to drop damage. It was crazy fragile to scratch damage. So you've got to pick kind of one or the other. Oh, Nick, don't do that. Samsung has glass stick. It's folding glass. No, there's a silicon substrate that really is not glass. Not in any way that we would classify glass as being a brittle, hard, durable substance. Glass stick. It's a type of plastic. That's what it is. And again, Moto, Shatter Shield, whatever Samsung is calling their plastic, glass, whatever it is, it's not glass. And we shouldn't give Samsung marketing that kind of help. So, moving right along. Yeah, I have no other replies, Nick. South Korea's top court clears Samsung chairman Lee in 2015 merger fraud case. This is over on Reuters, written up by Joyce Lee and Hee-kyung Yang. South Korea's top court cleared Samsung Electronics chairman J.Y. Lee of accounting fraud and stock manipulation on Thursday, permanently removing a long-running legal risk for the head of the country's biggest company. The Supreme Court upheld an appeals court ruling dismissing all charges in the case involving an $8 billion merger in 2015, freeing Lee to focus on Samsung's push to catch up in a global race to develop cutting-edge AI chips. All right, guys, I started laughing at the end of that. Someone in this chat right now tell me, Samsung falling behind in the chip race, is it because Lee, who was in prison for bribing the South Korean president and was under investigation for a decade over potential stock market manipulation and fraud, and seems to have gotten off the hook as Samsung has committed $200 billion in infrastructure to the South Korean economy, that's when we let him out of jail. Just funny coincidental timing. Do we think that Samsung struggles to make competitive processors is because this guy was really focused, was really distracted by his court cases? Anyone? What? I don't think that's it. I'm gonna take another drink of coffee here for just a second. But you tell me if you think this massive organization, the like cornerstone of the South Korean economy, their foundry business hinged on one executive who I think over the last 20 years has spent more time in prison and in court dealing with court cases, lawsuits, fraud, prison sentences. If that's what's holding back their engineers. Ah, if only Jay Lee was back in his office, I'd be able to do the lithography on 2 nanometer chips. But I'm just so emotionally distraught that he's in court again. I as an engineer can't do my job. That's Samsung. I just so attached to their chairman. You really got to appreciate that kind of dedication, that kind of commitment. From Rob Albano, sorry. I teach chemistry. It's plastic. Now, Rob, I mean, please tell me if I have this wrong. We can insert some type of silicon adjacent material and that can bend and fold, but that would not necessarily be glass in the way that we have always described glass. Please let me know if I have that wrong, because again, I'm not a material scientist and I'm not a chemist. So I would just be curious what your thoughts are on Glastic. But no one else is going for me on this Jay Lee story here. So I guess y'all just love Samsung and you're like, oh, I'm glad he's out of prison. I'm glad he's done with court cases. Nick, I'm questioning if anyone can catch TSMC. Wouldn't you know it? When we get more closer to the gadget block, I have a story that's actually kind of interesting about chip foundries production and what might go on with TSMC. So yeah. Rob Albano. Yes, you can make a mixture to give it glass-like properties, but it's still plastic. Okay. I feel vindicated. All right. I've been picking on Microsoft a lot for these kinds of stories, but we do have to start tagging other companies too. Amazon's AI push is undermining its sustainability goals, written up by Daniel Cooper over at Engadget. This is from a recent sustainability report from Amazon. The report increase is significant given Amazon's method of reporting its own environmental impact. Critics have suggested the mega retailer dramatically undercounts its impact by excluding common metrics. 2022, Amazon revised its climate reporting methodology, which also led to the company's figures falling dramatically. But even by its own account, their plans to reduce carbon output, they are still up 6% over its carbon footprint from 2022 to 2024. So let's say their reporting were spot on. They made, just like Microsoft. Microsoft is obviously worse at this, but Amazon also made these huge goals. They got a whole bunch of companies on. They've got 550 signatories for their climate pledge, where they're working with all these other companies to reduce their carbon footprint. And over the time period that they've started this process, oh, I'm sorry, their goals are supposed to be realized in 2040. So Microsoft's were 2030. So by 2040, they're supposed to be either carbon neutral or drastically reduced. And Amazon is currently up 6% by their own reporting, which critics say dramatically underestimates how much pollution they put out there. And again, it's probably some shell game they're playing with carbon offset credits. I bought this tree from a farmer, and that means that's 1 ton of carbon. But we still put it in the air, but we bought a tree. So I would actually appreciate this. You can go to my website, somegadgetguy.com, and there's a little contact page. If you don't have any other way of reaching me, this is easier than if you just hit me up on social media or you drop links in the Discord. I'd actually like to kind of have proper emails. As these companies are putting out sustainability reports, Google's was horrifically greenwashed. Oh, we're bringing on so much more clean energy, but we're using way more power than the clean energy that we're bringing online. But look at all the green power that we've lit up. But that doesn't help us. You're still putting more gunk up into the air. Microsoft, they are up 26% over the 5 years that they said they were going to start reducing their carbon footprint. And they're halfway through their 10-year commitment to be carbon neutral. They're up 26%. At the beginning of Amazon's, I think this is like a 15-year solution. They actually don't say. I might have that wrong. But their goal is 2040, zero emissions. They're up 6%. If you start catching companies that are putting out their own sustainability reports, they love to greenwash a few metrics and then hope that the media will just kind of ignore it. Send one of those articles my way. Send the report my way. Let me just look at the graphs and data that they put out and see if any of their claims hold water. You can hit me up on somegadgetguy.com, hit that contact page, and I'd love to start incorporating just a few more checkups. This company promised net zero by 2040. In 2025, they're up 6%. This is literally what's killing our environment and causing even greater climate disasters. These companies should be responsible for the hurricanes and floods and all the terrible weather and wildfires that are coming our way as the climate heats up faster than scientists anticipated. If we don't hold them accountable in some way, they're just going to keep doing this. And I think that's bad. I don't know about you, but I think this is unsustainable. And this AI market or this AI excuse is terrible business. It's bad for consumers. It's bad for investors. They just love having another bubble to ride until the bubble bursts. It's basically a rug pull game. Who's going to get their money out before the whole house of cards collapses? It's a dumb way to keep wrecking the economy, yet we keep letting billionaire man babies get away with this nonsense. It's just really dumb. Colin Murphy. Amazon putting the stain in sustainability. Colin, I think that's the winner for the podcast so far. I don't know how many people are going to be affected by this. I was shocked that I actually had a pretty decent collection of movies on this service. Microsoft just suddenly pulled the plug on their movies and TV app. So if you have movies and TV shows that you purchased in some way and then were watchable through this service that they used to offer, Microsoft no longer offers new entertainment content for purchase, including movies and TV shows on Microsoft.com, Microsoft Store on Windows, and the Microsoft Store on Xbox. However, you can continue to access your purchased content in the movies and TV app on Xbox or Windows devices. I'd love an over-under. How long do you think they're going to keep that catalog going? I think 5 years. I think after that, then enough people will have kind of migrated off of viewing content on the movies and TV app that Microsoft can kind of quietly shutter it. And then a few people will be outraged. I bought all of the seasons of Law and Order on my Xbox, and now I can't watch any of it. And a bunch of people will be like, oh, well, I'm sad for you, but you bought something and now you don't own it. I think it's kind of a medium. Like, you got about 5 years before whatever infrastructure is left is just kind of quietly eroded. Right now, it seems like the solution is, if you want to watch on other platforms and other services, you can tie your Microsoft content to Movies Anywhere. So, do I still? No, I don't have it up. I have it right here. So I wholeheartedly recommend. Flipping love this movie. It is one of the best vampire movies ever made. I have, of course, talking about Ryan Coogler's Sinners. Great film. The 4K version on Blu-ray looks so good. Like, don't stream this movie. Don't torrent this movie. Get some garbage like 720p, like 1 gigabyte movie file. You're not really consuming this movie. This movie is stunning and gorgeous. The cinematography is incredible. I love this film. But it also came with like a little digital code. So the Movies Anywhere codes let you sync this movie up with your Google Play and your Apple and your Amazon and all that stuff. I actually just got an email saying you've got to reapprove your Movies Anywhere permissions. And I went in here and was like, Amazon wants to steal all of your stuff. And I'm like, whoa. Well, I don't need to watch this on Amazon. I've got the shiny plastic disc. Maybe there's a copy of the shiny plastic disc on my Plex, and it looks real good. But that's the solution that I think you'll need to use with Microsoft. So if you had movies and TV shows on the Movies and TV app, check out Movies Anywhere, link up your Microsoft account, link up your Movies Anywhere account, and then it should show up on other services, devices, platforms. It's just a really dumb way to do business. And it gives credence to those pithy, if buying isn't ownership, then stealing isn't theft kinds of comments, but it's infuriating. It is so frustrating. I want to have this copy of this movie. This is like one of my favorite movies. I want to know I can watch it when I want to watch it, where I want to watch it. Oh, I don't own a digital copy of it anymore. I bought the comic Superman Red Sun. I bought it on Amazon. It just ticked over. So years after I bought it, I fired it back up and like it technically didn't exist. And I had to go into this weird like process with Amazon to find like an archive of it because they had done a slightly different new edition of Superman Red Sun. And the version that I had purchased was no longer available on Amazon. But they did me the favor of finding it again. You're like, this is so dumb. I'm never buying a digital comic ever again. If you do like a slightly different version, I have to rebuy it. That is stupid. That is horse poop. So again, I cannot stress this enough. Just like vinyl is finding this little niche community of audio enthusiasts. There are people who care about the experience of putting a record down and listening to that album. It's not background noise. Man, this is the activity. I want to hear this music. Maybe on nice speakers, maybe on nice headphones, but man, that's what I'm going for. If you care about the movies you watch and you want to make sure you can always watch them and you have a copy of it, the best way to do that is shiny plastic disc. The 4K version of Die Hard that I have. Brilliant. Looks stunning. Shiny plastic disc. The Omen, Gregory Peck, classic horror films, shiny plastic disc. Get the shiny plastic disc. And I mean, at worst, it's going to cost you like 1 month of a streaming platform, and that sucks. Because like, yeah, for a streaming platform, I could watch anything I want for a month. But then you have that movie forever. And anytime I want to pop in Sinners, I've got the absolute best quality, better than any streaming platform that I've seen. I can watch Sinners. Also, just watch Sinners. It's stunning. It is a gorgeous film. Love it. Chef's kiss. Mwah. Oh, yeah, and JJ4884 beat me to the Movies Anywhere plug. Microsoft Movies and TV is available on Sync for Movies Anywhere. Simon says, Hypno, everyone give Simon a shout. Woot, I just passed my first year of university. Simon! Woo! Good job, buddy. Simon says, Hypno says, I liked Sinners up until they started Vampire Musical Theater. I loved the movie even more after they did Vampire Musical Theater because the classic representation of a vampire was a scary story to teach kids about stranger danger, corruption, and stealing. Vampires were, especially when we start looking at like the Proto-Slavic kind of origin for a lot of these monsters, where witches and revenants and likes and vampires sort of infused, especially Eastern Europe. One of the things about vampires is they were corrupting influences that would pull people away from their communities. In the modern era, we have this storytelling of African American history where we all kind of know they were responsible for the sort of structure behind blues that eventually became rock and roll. Like the whole modern foundation of entertainment and music and dance kind of stems from African American and slave trade traditions, and then it was just sort of taken from them, kind of vampirically. So vampires are these dead or undead creatures that have no life or soul of their own, so they go to community, and it's not just literally sucking the lifeblood out of someone, but it's also figuratively sucking the lifeblood, the music, the art, the dance, because they can't do anything themselves. They're soulless undead. And I think Sinners nailed it. Everything about the sort of proto-vampire, the classic vampire stories, obviously blood is a metaphor for life and vibrance and vitality, but also the art, the music, the dance, all of that is now part of the vampire metaphor in Sinners. I think it's brilliant. Give me more vampire musicals. Because they exist solely to take from these communities, to literally suck the life and the music and the love out of whatever town they end up in. So B. Floyd, with Microsoft killing movies and TVs, are they issuing a refund? No, they are not. Currently, your library is still intact. Currently, you can still see the stuff that you've purchased, but that's why I was saying I'd love to hear the under over. How long do we think that that service is going to be maintained? As soon as they see a drop, enough of a drop in viewership from the archives of movies and TV, I think they'll let the whole thing slide. And then some people might make some noise. Maybe they have to issue some kind of token like, oh, our bad, here's $10 for the Microsoft store. But I think they're going to let it go. And I think they'll let it go in 5 years. That's my guess. From Goat V8, this is sort of related, but me and my girlfriend were talking about the copious amounts of DVDs out there that no one wants. I myself have a bunch. What do you think should be done with them? Do I keep any, or do you keep any? So I still have in our storage unit, and I don't know how good they are, but we still have almost all of our DVD and original Blu-ray collection. We have these giant Rubbermaid crates. Excuse me. And we kept everything. It was just, I was really into Netflix when Netflix started this entire streaming experience, and I packed them all up, and hey, we get to save space in our living room. Our condo is really small. That living room area is really small. So we've held on to all of them, and I'll go to our storage unit, pull a couple, like, oh, I love this movie, let me bring it back, and I'll rip it for my Plex. I don't file share any of it, but we do have copies of our most watched movies and TV shows. Like I just did Faulty Towers. The DVD, the quality isn't great. It's DVD quality, but it's like, hey, I love Faulty Towers, and it looked like garbage on PBS back in the day. It still kind of looks like garbage on a DVD rip today. It's fitting. One of the things, if you've got a ton of discs and you think they're still good, I would highly recommend talking to someone at your local library. This really helps out the community. I can't tell you how many people I've been talking to lately in a fairly affluent suburb in Los Angeles. They aren't spending as much money on streamers, but they do take their kids to the library every week and let's pick out a movie. It's like Blockbuster, but free. And that could be one solution. It's like the second life of getting that disc into someone else's hands. If you don't think I don't really need to have a copy of He's Just Not That Into You. I found that one. I have a Blu-ray of He's Just Not That Into You, and you're like, I don't know where I got this movie from. I don't think I've ever watched it, and this isn't something that's up my alley. You know what? I'm gonna give this to the library. It's in pristine condition, never been watched condition. So that would be one suggestion. I mean, you can always like try and sell off movies on eBay or something. It's really not worth the time, effort, and postage to like sell off movies and stuff. You can always ask around if your friends want this stuff, but so few of like my family members now really have a dedicated disc playing solution anymore. Back when I didn't sort of despise her politics. No, let me say that another way. Back before I knew her politics were despicable, I got the Blu-ray collection for the Harry Potter films. So that came with 4K Blu-rays and 1080p Blu-rays. And I'm like, well, I don't need these 1080p discs. And I asked my family members, hey, does anyone, the entire Harry Potter collection in 1080p, you just have it. And like my brother and my sister was like, oh, we don't really have players anymore. Like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just keep them. And then I ended up dropping them off at the library. So that I think would probably be my main suggestion. Oh, B. Floyd. I mean, same, but we don't have regulators that can enforce this. B. Floyd says, I have movies anywhere, but I would like them to just let me move my license. And you're like, yeah, it'd be cool. It's never gonna happen. You did business with Microsoft, and they're gonna tank that purchase. And it's a bummer. But again, for us to not have things like that happen, we need to have a properly functioning FTC. So the next time you see some political debate between conservatives and liberals, one side typically funds the FTC better and allows them to be an enforcement arm, and the other side uses the FTC as an extension of the president to harm businesses that don't fall in line with the president. I keep pointing this stuff out, but if you don't want stuff like this to happen and to keep happening and to not have any kind of recourse, you need a functional regulator. And that's how that should work. From Michael C, the library still works for now, although if you want it all, your movies in one place, that's gone. This is great advertisement for Plex or Jellyfin or some kind of local storage solution. Our DVD collection was kind of obscene, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of DVDs. So my Plex has now gotten really large. It's very difficult now to do a migration for whenever I'm looking at like, hey, maybe I want to add drives to my NAS. It's a chore now. There's lots of stuff on there. From Rosathi, donating to the library is a great idea. From Goat V8 again, I'm all for donating them, but you just see free ones all over Craigslist and piles at thrift stores. Seems like they're unwanted, but there are lots out there. So the thing is also just look for your favorite films. Take advantage of that in the market. Like, say you're not a snob like I am, because I want them 4K Blu-rays, but you see like, oh yeah, I'm going through, what was it? We were in Gallup, New Mexico. They still have a bunch of stores in their mall like FYE. And I go in there and it's like I'm transported back into the early 2000s and just racks of CDs and DVDs. And I'm going through and they had used copies of Gremlins and Gremlins 2. Both of those films together cost me $4. Yoink! I did not have Gremlins or Gremlins 2 in my collection. Marie made fun of me so hard, but it was like, this works for me. And then if I'm done with other discs, or I don't think this is a movie I'm ever really going to want to revisit, or I'm fine like maybe buying another copy some other way, take that disc, go drop it off at the library. It's not that these things are unwanted, it's that we've got to pick where people actually want them. There are places where people want this stuff. There are areas where people are just trying to get rid of it, right? They're just trying to get rid of discs and stuff like that. But you go to a library and people want that stuff at their library. So you just gotta, I don't know. I think it's worth making the effort just to see. Nick Gay. Secretly, I could see Juan watching that movie at night when everyone's asleep. He's just not that into you. It's in the name of the title. It's great. I don't know. Do we need to spend a lot of time on these YouTubers? I'm going to skip through these. This is a pair of stories that I actually pulled from Ars Technica days apart from each other, and I just thought the juxtaposition of these two stories was kind of interesting, but I'm not legally qualified to go through these different regions and these different issues. So both of these articles are in the show notes. They're links in the show notes. Please click on them, read through them. I think this is, it's two examples of how YouTubers are not considered journalists. And 99% of the time, I actually think that's fair. I think most YouTubers do a terrible job of exhibiting any kind of journalistic ethic, and I don't believe they deserve the protections of journalists, but then actual journalists are pretty terrible at this stuff too. So the first story is out of Italy. So this was written up by Ryan Whitman over on Ars Technica. YouTuber faces jail time for showing off Android-based gaming handhelds. Now, it's not as simple as what the article headline is, but we're all aware there are these really awesome little console-like game-playing devices that run some kind of build of Android. They're inexpensive devices manufactured out of China, and they're very good at playing through older video games. And I'm sure in our chats and in our videos, you might have noticed, like, I've done a lot of stuff with tablets. I try not to publicly talk too much about things like emulation these days because it's such a dicey topic. Nintendo will come barging in and like nuke your channel if you make a misstep. But we can't escape that there's no way to do business with some of these companies for the games that they licensed for their original consoles in a way that is reasonable for all consumers. Like if Nintendo would do what Neo Geo did, I don't think there'd be as much appetite for emulation. But I actually do own most of the Neo Geo catalog on Android. It's still just an emulator, but what they did is they licensed the game and they stuck the game ROM and emulator together. And I think I paid like $5 a title. And, you know, I wasn't super hardcore into Neo Geo, but I bought those games for Android the way that I wanted to buy those games. And now I can play them on devices that play that game remarkably well. But in Italy, there are much stricter laws against any kind of depiction or conversation around emulation. And so this YouTuber, just in reviewing the handhelds, is facing actual jail time. Once We're Nerd attracted the attention of Italy's Ministry of Economy and Finance, which is tasked with policing copyright in the country. In the video first spotted by Android Authority, the YouTuber explains that Guardia di Finanza appeared at his door in April with a search warrant. And this is where international law gets really tricky. For example, Japan's laws on copyright and on IP and on theft are very, very much different than the laws in the United States. So again, like Nintendo is still embroiled in litigation with Pal World. And it's wild that the case isn't going as well as I think Nintendo had hoped. And they're literally changing patents mid-court case to try and force Pal World into a situation where they're violating Nintendo's patents. Don't you see, like, when a company gets too big in any particular niche, that's not a good thing for consumers? Like, it's bad. I think Nintendo is responsible for some of my happiest, fondest, most cherished childhood memories. And at the same time, I can still say, hey, you know, I don't think you're doing business the best way you could. I don't think you're being the best Nintendo you can be. Completely different, another story is in the news about YouTubers and massive tech corporations. This one also from Ars Technica, written up by Andrew Cunningham. Apple sues YouTuber who leaked iOS 26's new liquid glass software redesign. In January, YouTuber John Prosser posted a video to his front page tech channel that claimed to be, quote, your very first look at iOS 19, end quote, the operating system that Apple would announce as iOS 26 a few months later. Though Prosser claimed he, quote, could not show the real video of what I saw because he wanted to protect his source, the rest of the video showed a mock-up for a redesigned version of the camera app, which ended up being a preview of the company-wide liquid glass redesign that Apple would show off at its Worldwide Developers Conference in June. Prosser also posted more extensive iOS 19 previews in April, including one labeled the biggest iOS leak ever. And see, I have an issue, or I have a problem. On the one hand, I've been actually on live streams with John Prosser. His content isn't for me. I don't think he and I would get along. I don't think he would particularly care for my company, and I think that would probably be a mutual feeling from the few interactions that we've had on other people's live streams and podcasts and stuff. Is he acting as a journalist? And that's kind of breaking my brain a little. I'm protecting my source. So here in the United States, we play this ridiculous shell game with free speech and with journalism. And it matters sometimes if someone's a journalist, and it matters other times that they're not. And can some random person claim to have a source and protect that source? Well, no, they're not really a journalist. But we have these sort of free speech absolutists that say, hey, it's totally cool if a massive network of talking heads pollutes the minds of our grandparents with outright lies and misrepresentations of the truth. Free speech. So we have certain journalistic protections and we have certain website protections, but again, it always seems to just kind of coalesce around who can spend the most money to fight a court case. Well, now we'll grant them some kind of protection. Similarly, like Google calls me an influencer. I'm a terrible influencer. I'm not an influencer. But because I'm a singular host on a YouTube channel of my own making, and it's only a medium-sized YouTube channel, I do not qualify as media. I don't get invited to Google events now because I was on #TeamPixel. And that's influencer marketing, even though Google totally lied about where Team Pixel came from. Because that's not what I signed up for. That's not how Team Pixel started. They're just trying to cover their butts, and their PR agency is laughably bad at managing those kinds of relationships. So I guess I'm not a journalist. So doesn't that give me cover? Well, now I don't need to act journalistically, and I can just do whatever I want, misrepresent products and services, and just take money for affiliate marketing and sponsored videos and posts and stuff. But I kind of like my reputation. I kind of like being the guy that I am. So John Prosser gets involved in all of this, and he's an opportunist. He's a leaker. His entire business model is, can I get my hands on a major piece of news and break it before the company has a chance to present it the way that they would want to present it? I guess that's a flavor of journalism. It's a flavor of journalism that I have very little respect for, but it is news hound investigating. So where do we draw this line? And it's so messy. The technology has completely outpaced our legal system's ability to account for platforms. Because we still have this kind of entrenched mentality that if you're a journalist, you work at a newspaper, right? Those are like the judges that you're going to go before. You need to have some kind of banner. Well, if he had CNBC, like if he was a contributor there, legit, not just like a CNBC blog, everyone can blog on this CNBC website, like he was a listed employee of CNBC, then he would be a journalist and he'd be allowed to protect his sources. I don't think that's right. But I also don't care for this style of breaking news and leaking data. So it's like, on the one hand, like I feel there's something in here that we need to protect or defend, but on the other hand, it's like, man, I wish it didn't have to be this. So it's pretty rough. Hold on, let me take a drink of coffee. From Ted, straight to jail, right away. Someone talks about emulating. That's straight to jail. Yeah, we're better here. Where was it? Was it Argentina? I can't remember. I need to rewatch Parks and Rec. I loved that show. Michael C. There is a revival of people that care about owning their own DVDs because of the ones they're buying digitally are being taken away from them as they realize they don't actually own them. From Goat V8, I'd have to check this, but I saw some reports saying that it wasn't Nintendo or Sony suing the guy, but actually some part of the Italian government that he was going against. I mentioned that in just recounting the article, that the appearance was from an Italian representative that enforces copyright. But to enforce copyright, there needs to be a violation of copyright. So I'd be very curious to see, how was the Italian government notified about this channel, or is it common practice in Italy for the Italian government to consume massive amounts of videos to try and find violations of copyright? Because to me, that seems like an unsustainable task, whereas they get a little complaint, hey, this guy's talking about NES ROMs. And then they go and enforce that policy. And I would not be terribly surprised if there was a paper trail that suggested a major game publisher was the one that kicked off the Italian government's interest in investigating this individual. But again, we'll probably never get that kind of information. Michael C. Try to imagine how Juan ended up on the same stream as John Prosser. I don't think that's completely unimaginable. I've been on some pretty big shows. I used to do a bunch of cable news. Like, I was a correspondent for Fox LA. My audience was the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, and I would do wacky segments. Oh, hey, let's unlock savings with unlocked phones, and I'd pull phones out of little lockers. Like, come on. I mean, yeah, John Prosser is a leaker and stuff, but it's not like I haven't done stuff. Come on. Yeah, Ted. I mean, again, the line is nebulous. That journalism argument overflows a lot in the podcasting sector as well. Just messiness all around. Feels like something needs to be cleaned before lines can be drawn. And we need to have definitions, but then when you define things, technically you're infringing on someone's free speech. And that's always going to be the way that unearnest participants will game the system against people who earnestly follow tradition and legal. What's the word? Oh, shoot. What's the word? When a judge sets policy. Precedent. Legal precedent. Woo! That was bad. So, as you notice, this presidential administration doesn't care about precedent. They just ran roughshod over all the things they complained Biden might do. This president just does. And we cared about whether or not we had guardrails and precedent and the court rulings and all this stuff. And now this president's just like, try and stop me. So, again, to clearly define where these roles start and stop, you'd need to set bumpers on what is news. Can you call something news if it's lies? Well, we say, again, when conservatives aren't in power, we're very concerned about this. When conservatives are in power, well, you can't stop our free speech. We should be able to lie as much as we want, and it's up to the market to correct those lies. See, we have no mechanism for correcting misinformation, and especially weaponized disinformation. We got to protect the free speech of Russian bots on social media platforms. Can't have any appearance of manicuring out bad information. That would be infringing on someone's free speech, even if that someone is just a Russian bot. And we're not really having an earnest conversation about it, because unearnest people trying to manipulate this to their own ends love preying on the precedent and the tradition and the legal protections, while they then try to get rid of those protections and precedent for everyone else. Until we can effectively counter that strategy, our species is doomed. So CNBC or an independent, he and his cohort broke into someone's phone and stole the images. At some point, leak culture is going too far, and the guy got fired for it, which I think will be interesting to see. Because again, there is a lot of accusations of misconduct. Apple, that's what Apple is saying about John Prosser. And I think John Prosser's argument is, well, someone else did something bad. I just got the information after someone else did something bad. So it's not me, and I have to protect my source. But again, in an absolutist way, that could still be deemed as an argument for some kind of journalistic protections because our country doesn't define those roles in any way that's tangible or actionable. And it leaves me feeling like this is definitely not the fight I want to wage or the hill I want to die on, but like, what do we do? We've got to do something. Yes, Simon says hypno, exactly. But no to the auto pen, he said, as others signed off using his digitized signature. Yeah, auto pen was such a big problem when Biden was in office, but Trump seems to be doing just fine with his auto pen. Maybe it was Biden's auto pen was like lower resolution or something. All right, so we're getting into some other news here. I mentioned this is just a company to keep an eye on because I had never heard of them before. I'm just going to bring up this article here. I know I keep saying I'm going to try and abbreviate this stuff, but I don't have news here. It's just awareness. Coming by way of Tom's Hardware, written up by Anton Shalov, Japanese chip maker Rapidus begins test production of 2 nanometer circuits. Company commits to single wafer processing ahead of 2027 mass production target. They're now saying their test samples should be available next year. I want you all, when you're done with this podcast, go look up the company Rapidus. They're a Japanese company that was started fairly recently, and they're way ahead of their production schedule in trying to get 2 nanometer chip fab production working in Japan. That is not gonna rock TSMC. Right now, TSMC is indomitable at the premier end of the most expensive chip manufacturing. But if Rapidus is really meeting their targets and beating their targets, they're starting totally fresh. They don't have a whole bunch of clients with a whole bunch of machines supporting older technologies and older fabrications, and they've got to keep different manufacturing pipelines and processes working in different ways. They're starting immediately at the target to beat a lot of other fabs like Samsung and Intel and TSMC to mass production of 2 nanometer. So check them out. I had to read up on them on the wiki. This is a Japanese consortium. I think there's also dang it, that massive Japanese firm that also owns like a chunk of ARM. Not Sunbank. I don't remember. My brain is fried from all of this hammering. This could be a really big deal. So keep an eye on this company, keep an eye out for this company, look up the news on this company. I cannot offer any kind of investment advice or anything like that, but I think it's fascinating. If they can just leapfrog all of the other production challenges, this would actually be, I think one of the issues, you look at how Chinese fabs are starting to catch up, but they've been restricted in what technologies they could access, and they're having to slowly kind of ease their way into smaller and smaller manufacturing, chip fabrication. This company is looking to hard target an aggressive new fabrication, a new node, ahead of some of these other players like Samsung and TSMC. So, from Aditya Nil. Juan, is it time to buy the remnants of the LG Mobile and make a chip deal with Rapidus for some good deals? Time to disrupt the market. Thank you. Simon says Hypno. SoftBank. I couldn't remember SoftBank. Man. Oh, and JJ4884 clicked onto it too. Nick A. TSMC is getting close to 70% yield in 2 nanometer. Intel is around 50. So is Samsung. I don't know that those numbers are legit just yet. And again, what every company is calling 2 nanometer is slightly different fabrication and processing sizes. And I would highly recommend checking out channels like Tech Potato. But it's still a race. So if Rapidus is putting out their test wafers and they're ahead of schedule, 2 nanometer in 2026, they could start pulling a few boutique clients. They could start pulling a few orders away from TSMC. It doesn't radically change the landscape, like I said, but it starts to open up a field. If they can, because I think this has only been 5 years. I want to say they've been in this aggressive growth place for about 5 years. And they can already leapfrog a lot of the other challenges and a lot of the other issues with other larger fabrication methods, and they can go right to what the bleeding edge is. This opens up the door for other countries to start saying, what if we made a play at a foundry too? In China, they're still dealing with older fabrication processes, right? Well, what if Brazil says, hey, you know what? We want to take over as the leading supplier of automotive chips at 5 nanometers. So we don't need this bleeding edge technology. It could take us like 3 years, but then we could get a chip fab up and running, and that sucks out some of TSMC's bottom end. That puts a world of hurt on Samsung. They have no customers at Samsung Foundry. Actually, they've got Google radios. Your Pixel radio is still going to be a garbage Samsung radio. So you see, it's not just one or all or nothing. It's got to be a competitor against TSMC. What this represents is a strategy, a path to market in a radically fast timetable that could make any other company much more competitive in this space. Instead of building out this entire huge infrastructure and working their way up new technology processes, you could jump to an end result here as, Intel might be talking up 1.8A. It's not really 1.8 angstrom, but it's like it's 1.8A. So we're calling it 1.8A. Remember, they were stuck at like 12 nanometers or 11 nanometers or 10 nanometers for multiple generations of chips. And then they just started saying, well, our 10 nanometers is kind of like TSMC's 5 or 7 or whatever it was. So again, just a company to check out, a company to keep an eye on. Yeah, Josh W., I think Unisoc might still be doing 10 nanometer and 12 nanometer chips. I think Unisoc might be stuck at 10 nanometer. But again, that 10 nanometer is getting them what? I believe the most powerful Unisoc chip is very similar in structure to a Snapdragon 855. That's still an incredible performer if you want to put that chip into some, like a network attached storage box. The Unisoc SoCs are really good at those kinds of applications. Not another one that we need to spend a lot of time on. We just recently talked about the news that HMD was giving up on the Nokia license, so not surprising from GSM Arena that Nokia is looking for another license. So I know Aditya Anil was saying maybe we need to revive the LG smartphone brand, but what if we just revived Nokia? So we all got together. If everyone in this chat donated $500 million, I'll put up 500 million of my own money too. But if everyone in here donated $500 million, we could bring back Nokia and make them legit again. Why don't we could jump on that? I don't know. I'd be curious. I think it might be too expensive. There's something interesting, like what if a Nokia label was slapped on a TCL? TCL actually makes phenomenally good hardware for other labels, but they're almost always that solution for like, the T-Mobile Revel, like the cheapest possible phone in a carrier's lineup of self-branded devices. And TCL was responsible for making the BlackBerry Key series, the Key 1 and Key 2. Brilliant phones. That hardware, so good. so good. There's like a little glimmer of an idea. Like, what if Nokia was licensed by TCL and then we got new devices? But I know for a fact that TCL would focus on exactly the strategy that HMD had is what if we just made the absolute least expensive phones and they got like 2 years of support and they were durable and they lasted, decently long, but they're super low budget. And I think unfortunately that's kind of what the Nokia name would come to represent from now. But if there's someone else, like maybe a Unihertz, right? Or maybe like a Techno. Like Techno is like is like an umbrella corporation licensing the Nokia name would do huge business overseas. If they were putting out like Infinix or Techno style devices with good cameras, great features like fast charging, big batteries, I think the Nokia name could do really well under that umbrella too. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see who might actually foot the bill on something like licensing that name, because I'm not sure how much value is left in the Nokia name outside of some nostalgia. From Ross Sathi, The Simpsons also did it with one episode where Bart and Milhouse drinks the squishies from the Quickie Mart. Haha. JJ48 is saying TCL, but with better software development. I think that's fair. Joshua W just saying that would be interesting. I don't know. I just feel like, and again, just from the response that this story is getting right now, I kind of think we're done. Are we done with Nokia? Would there be something that would pull you back? Moving right along, just another quickie as we get into our last story, because I do want to talk about that Vivo. I don't think anyone's going to be shocked here. We've been talking a bit in this podcast just about chips and foundries and fabs, and I'm fascinated by the silicon business. But when the numbers are actually presented, the current state of the market is wild. Where I've been kind of a lifelong AMD fan. My current machine is a Threadripper. My first solo all by myself PC build was an AMD Thunderbird. I've always loved just the position AMD had as a disruptor in the market. Intel was this big behemoth, this giant corporate. No one could beat the Intel until now. Coming by way of our friends over at Notebook Check, AMD is absolutely hammering Intel in CPU sales as even old AM4 chips outsold the latest Arrow Lake CPUs last week. And this is a really well-researched article written up by Fawad Murtaza. And you can go down to these numbers here. This is from one retailer, Mind Factory in Germany, but does seem to indicate trends across other retailers too. So like when you go to even like an Amazon and you look at best sellers, you don't get a lot of data, but they will tell you like, oh, well, this is a bestseller and it sold like 500 units, and this is a bestseller and it sold 10,000. You can get some scope from Amazon just as a consumer. You can go and see where products rank, but specifically from this German retailer. Let me put the screen share back on. I'm looking at the screen and you're looking at my ear as I look at the screen. The numbers on this are really crazy. Like a 57, an AMD Ryzen 7 5700G, a great mid-ranger, but now what, like 3-generation old chip from AMD. AM4 socket, that's the older socket, AMD's currently on AM5, is outselling the top-selling Intel chip 3-to-1. 3-to-1. And this entire chart of their chips and sales is dominated by AMD until the last entry, which is an Intel Core Ultra 7, a really good, sort of higher quality chip, the 265K, and it's neck and neck with the 8700G from AMD, the Ryzen 7. So this is sort of their premium chip, not their top of the line, most expensive 9 series. The 7 series is a really good chip. The last generation AMD 7 series chip selling neck and neck. Then you move up to something a little pricier like the Ryzen 9 9900. The 9 series chip is selling 50% more. It is unbelievable. I think this is wild that AMD has not only caught Intel, but has surpassed them so dramatically in this kind of PC sales space, where AMD was this like niche little player, great bang for buck. Even though they were responding like Athlon, I had to get an Athlon. It was the first dual core chip, properly supported. AMD gave us the instruction set for consumer facing 64-bit computing. AMD nailed all of these little moments, but Intel still dominated. And Intel would often catch up, like the Core series originally. Phenomenal competition once we started going back to like Pentium 3 style architecture and made chips more efficient. Intel gave us some phenomenal competition. But getting into this modern era from 12th gen Intel to now with the 200 series, the new Intel Core Ultras, Intel's just been in a holding pattern for years and not really doing much impressive. Like, I'm still getting mini PCs with like 12th gen Intel because like it's really no point to go to 13th gen Intel. They're almost exactly the same. Maybe some clock speed bumps and some minor tweaks to chip arch, but like nothing really changes. So at least with the 200 series, like if you get a Core Ultra 7 265, finally we're seeing some differences in core configuration, and the GPUs have gotten a lot more competitive against AMD for integrated graphics. But it's just wild to see this dominating. Like there's no ambiguity, there's no competition. It is just AMD all the way down the chart. I mean, how many are even listed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You have to go 21 processors down the list before an Intel chip makes an appearance. That is, if you had told me that even 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you. Of course, Intel will be in the mix. And right now, like this Intel chip that they're mentioning, I think it's on sale for something ridiculous. One of the reasons why it's on this list is because I think it's being sold for like half price against a comparable AMD chip. I looked it up, like you can find it for $250. This is a chip that should sell for like 500. Crazy. Crazy. JJ4884, is AMD doing better on LLM compatibility? I don't know. I so I've run like local LLMs, and really they just seem to want more compute power. So a CPU with more core, like my Threadripper does real good hosting an LLM. Man, all those cores start kicking on, and it's a lot faster than my Intel laptop. I can't tell you if that's more efficient or better compatibility. Also from JJ4084, is there a reason LLMs are better supported on NVIDIA versus AMD, or am I imagining things? I mean, a lot of that just comes down to who's putting out the better toolkits. NVIDIA's making the bigger AI plays. Like, they don't really care about gamers. They're making all their money on like data centers and crypto and AI. So I don't think it's too surprising that they're putting out better resource materials and more powerful GPUs, so that companies will buy tons of those NVIDIA GPUs to use for AI, and then the experience just sort of circulates. And those engineers go to different companies and like, well, you need NVIDIA data centers. Oh, okay, we'll get NVIDIA. And I think that's just sort of a self-sustaining reputation. Simon says Hypno, unlocking 2 extra cores on a dual core AMD CPU still brings me joy to this day, 16 years later. If you know, you know. From Nick Gay, Juan, don't forget the bugginess of Intel 13th gen. Yeah, processors are dying and stuff. It's real bad. So Intel 13th and 14th gen chips suffering a lot of chip failures, power supply issues, miscommunications with motherboard manufacturers. There's definitely a lot of fear in that market too. But I'm seeing this chart of AMD processors going back as far as the 5000 series. So from 5000 to 6000 to 7000 to 8000 to 9000 in desktops and in laptops. We've got about 4 generation spread of AMD CPUs, where we have a 1 generation spread of Intel. That's one of the other reasons, like you're right, it's not really worth maybe picking up a 13th gen part, especially if you're concerned about a high performance CPU having some bugginess, but that shouldn't affect 11th gen. And 12th gen seemed a bit more resilient than 13th gen. So there's no representation. Like, people aren't going to older Intel, they're going to older AMD. And that's what's blowing my mind. It's like, hey, yeah, we're pretty confident. Like, I even have a 9th gen Intel Nook, and that thing is an absolute monster. That is a beast of an Intel Core i9 9th gen system. Still overpowerful for a lot of the stuff that we use it for, right? We haven't completely eclipsed the most powerful machines from a few generations back. Nowhere to be found. But I think actually, Nick, and to your point, one of the things that also messes Intel up is, so we've just gotten the 200 series out. We're already hearing rumors about the next generation of Intel processors, and the rumors are pointing to yet another die change, another socket change. That's the word I need. So this kind of burned me, my one main Intel build. I got a professional grade motherboard and a more expensive CPU, multi-core. I forget exactly which one I got. Thinking like, well, this is their like business workstation grade solution. It should have some longevity. And it got one tiny minor refresh, like a new CPU, 1 gen, and then that motherboard socket was done. I can't even do a CPU swap. It's not even worth gutting my machine and putting in a new CPU for like a 3% improvement to the performance that I had on this thing. I have to get a whole new motherboard. And then I got a Threadripper. This Threadripper has lasted me way longer than I originally intended it to. But 4 proper generations of AMD, we've got 2 sockets. I don't feel like there's a lot of confidence in Intel's strategy when they're looking at, oh, yeah, the new chip is going to be coming out soon, guys. So don't buy anything now, because when the new chip comes out, you're going to need to buy a new motherboard and new RAM anyway. Whereas in AMD land, I feel you could jump on AM5, get yourself a nice motherboard. You don't have to go crazy. Get a good like upper mid-range gaming or workstation grade. You could get, what is this, an 8000 series chip for cheap now. And I'm pretty confident that whatever 10,000 series AMD chip comes out will probably still be AM5. So you're good. Oh, Nick, yeah, some other comments here from Nick. Let me just read through these real quick. AMD's architecture is very similar in theory to the MediaTek chip philosophy, and Intel can't make the yield, and the architecture doesn't translate for the future. They are trying to make x86 equal to ARM. And AMD was ahead with little chiplet designs, like you were saying, the MediaTek philosophy, also how the sort of component piecing and parts, the packaging on that was very similar to what both MediaTek and Qualcomm are doing now too. But you're not wrong. If you look at an Intel chip today, it is as close to an ARM SoC as x86 can get. It looks so much like a phone chip now. So yeah, you're spot on there, Nick. It's wild that like Intel gave up. They had X scale, they gave up their ARM play, and now they're stuck, right? AMD is going to be more nimble. AMD is actually going to be able to iterate, and AMD actually could make a transition and probably do some kind of ARM solution if they wanted to, just based on their current manufacturing and chip design. I don't think it would be as difficult for them. But Intel is kind of stuck.
So, want to wrap up the show as we start breaking past our 2 hour time allotment here. This isn't a radical leak, but it's one of my favorite phone manufacturers, so I definitely wanted to bring this up. The folks over at GSM Arena have published a pair of stories looking at the Vivo X300 Pro, and I don't think we're going to be too surprised. It looks like it's going to be exceedingly similar to the X200 Pro, but we do have some indication that this is going to use MediaTek's next chip, a Dimensity 9500, whatever MediaTek actually calls their next phone chip. If it is the 9500, it looks like Vivo's going to stick with them for their Pro. But the cool thing is, in a phone that looks almost exactly like the X200 Pro, Vivo's going to try and move us up to a 7,000 milliamp hour battery. 7,000 milliamp hour battery. And that with this incredible capacity increase, that we're still going to keep 90-watt wired charging. The strategy for the camera sounds like it's going to be about the same. Same 1/1.28-inch main sensor, probably a smaller ultra wide, like the X200 Pro has a smaller ultra wide sensor, and the same 200 megapixel periscope. The megapixels aren't important though. That periscope camera with a 1/1.4-inch type sensor. All of this with like Zeiss branding and T-Star coatings. The main thing I would want to see is that they fix some of the light flares. This combo on the X200 Pro is very prone to off-axis light. Like if the sun is within 180 degrees of the back of your phone, you get lens flares going through that main camera sensor. That would be the one biggie I would want to see fixed from the X200 Pro. But whatever happens with MediaTek and the Dimensity 9500, that battery capacity improvement that looks really tasty. In an era where Samsung is trying to impress us with ultra thinness and really small batteries with really slow charging, keeping this phone form factor the same, a normal sized phone, it's a totally regular phone, but adding another 1,500 milliamp hours, milliamps, to this without changing the form factor and keeping the crazy fast charging would easily turn this into a 3-day phone with my use. So every 3 days, I'd plug it in for 20 or 30 minutes and I'd go another 2 days and be totally fine. Like I bring up stuff like this. Like we kind of talked about this in the video that I did on the OnePlus Watch 3. I think my wife is done with Pixel. She's definitely given up on her Pixel Watch. Her first Pixel Watch fell apart. Her Pixel Watch 2 was constantly being managed. If I use it to work out and to sleep track, I've got to charge it twice over a 24-hour period. Because I need enough battery that I can sleep with it, but then I need enough battery that I can do a workout with it, and I still want it on my wrist most of the day for like notifications and alerts. You're constantly managing the watch. And now she plugs it in for 20 minutes and she goes 2 days. And then she plugs it in for 20 minutes and she goes 2 days. And it's literally that watch experience that she's seriously looking at a OnePlus for her next phone. That battery, I can't overstate this. Excuse me. I cannot exaggerate that. I can't. When you show someone big battery and fast charging, it is a fundamental change to how they handle their phone. You are babysitting your phone less, you're using it more, and it's spending less time on a charger or you paying attention, oh no, I might be out of battery. If I had a phone with a 7,000 milliamp hour battery, you leave the house, you forgot to plug it in, the battery's at 30%, that's still gonna last you all day. All day. Or if you can take 10 minutes, plug it in, get that up to like 70%, and it's gonna go all day, all night, and all the next day. And you cannot do that with a Pixel. You cannot do that with an iPhone, and you cannot do that with a Galaxy. We keep trying to impress consumers, and we keep ignoring the stuff that they ask for, like better battery life. I'm playing with this Motorola right now. It's a cute little Motorola flippy phone. It's a Razr Plus. Flip style phones are not for me. This is a fashion statement. This is a cute little makeup compact design. This doesn't do anything for my life. This is not how I want to interact with my gadgets and electronics and services, and it's limited. It makes no sense to have a Snapdragon 8 series processor in that Razr. It runs hot. That processor throttles if you try to do anything on it. You've put a V8 in a car with a tiny fuel tank. Motorola was correct on the very first Razr Flip. You should put in a mid-ranger processor because then you get significantly more battery life, and there really aren't compromises for the intended use of a little flip style phone. You're not going to shoot feature films on it. Not like filmmakers shoot on iPhone. You're not going to do that. You're not really going to sit there and grind graphics intense games on a flip style phone. Putting the V8 in there is a waste. You should be looking at something like a more mid-ranger CPU that gets you much better fuel economy. Because a flip phone, from what we remember flip phones being, were phones that could last 2 or 3 days on a charge, at least. If I go and pick up, like I've got a little LG in there, I think I used to charge that like every 4 days. Because it's a little flip phone. That's what a flip phone should be. So again, it's like, well, it's expensive because it's got a hinge and a foldy bendy plastic screen, but it's got like okay cameras on it. The device is not conducive to editing 4K video, playing Genshin Impact, doing all these things. Like that's not what you're going to use this phone for. So it'd be like going to like a Honda dealership and being like, well, I really want that Honda Civic. Can you put a V12 in there? Like, no, that is a ridiculous combination. You should not want that. But here we are. It's expensive. You got to have the faster processor. Are you mad? You can't use the faster processor in here. All of the surface area for getting heat out also has a screen on the back. So you've thermal choked this design. Oh, it needs to have a Snapdragon 8. It needs to have the V8 in there. That's just like cars. It's like a V8. I can't have a 7. That's one less. That's one less Snapdragon. I need 8 Snapdragons, not 7 Snapdragons. What are you trying to do? You can't pull the wool over my eyes. I'm a savvy consumer. I read a spec sheet. What are we doing? What are we doing? So yeah, sorry, short story, incredibly long. I am looking forward to the Vivo X300 Pro, but I'm also going to point out when the Vivo X300 Pro arrives, I'm sure there will be other things that are better. But if you are a savvy consumer, there will be this phone out there, established in the market, called the Vivo X200 Pro, which will be very similar to the X300 Pro, and you'll probably be able to get these on ridiculous sales. And it's still going to have the most powerful CPU of its generation. It's still going to be phenomenal at most graphics intense games. The cameras are going to be very similar, if a bit more prone to light flares in sort of direct and off-axis sunlight. The battery is going to be 1500 milliamps smaller. But what if you could get it for like half price? I think next year is going to be an even more brutal version of this year, where at the end of every review, I have to say, yeah, this new phone is better in some ways, But if you got a good deal on last year's phone or a 2-year-old phone, maybe that would do better for you. Who knows? Yep, and Simon says Hypno 7,000 milliamp hour in next flagships from Vivo and Honor. And I would be very surprised if Xiaomi weren't breaking 6,000 in a lot of their phones. The battery tech conversation is just hilarious. Here in the United States, we have the 3 worst players for longevity, fast charging, and new battery technology. We can't make a device then unless we sacrifice battery capacity. That is so stupid. I don't, again, all of these YouTubers out there, hey, I held the new Samsung Fold and it blew my mind. It is 0.1 millimeters thicker than a Vivo X Fold and has, what is it, 30% less battery? But I make so much money on my affiliate links for Samsung. Click on my affiliate. Aren't you so impressed? I thought it was going to be garbage. I really did. But through pure meritocracy of people buying stuff on my affiliate links, I'm totally won over. And who cares about S Pen anymore? I don't need features. Buy this expensive phone. And I'm just so cynical. And like, it sucks all the joy out of actually having competitive options in this landscape. And you point to like a OnePlus, you're like, oh, OnePlus, they used to be the cheap phone. And you're like, oh my God, techies suck so bad. So I'm going to start bringing this in for a landing here because we are going a bit long. But I did want to point this out from Nick Gay saying, I really don't recommend Intel to anyone. I'm moving to Chromebook. So Nick, I think your timing on that is actually really good because a lot of the nicer Chromebooks in the past have been Intel. Like the Core i5 was super popular when we were trying to make Chromebooks a little bit nicer. We still have a Pixelbook Go in this house. We don't use it often, but we do like to bring it out. It's a handy little web browser. Sometimes we need something for Lex's school. She did all of her work in school in Chrome. It works. That thing has held up remarkably well because we have not been kind to the Pixelbook Go. It's still hanging in there. It's still performing well enough for us to bring it out of retirement from time to time. But sitting over here on my desk right now, Nick, if you're not super into Intel, but you've been recommending Chromebooks to people, it's a little pricier for a Chromebook. We're used to talking about Chromebooks like they're like bargain basement, the cheapest of the cheap. And I totally get it, right? Student grade machines, but they perform decently well. Get your kid a Chromebook. It's a decent enough laptop. But the new Chromebook Plus series, Google trying to make the same streamlined experience, but for people who want something a little bit nicer. Like the Pixelbook Go was a great example of that. Chromebooks are streamlined. This is still for someone who wants something a little nicer. But you don't want Intel. Well, wouldn't you know it, here's this real pretty Lenovo. It says Chromebook Plus up here on the screen. And this is the 14-inch Lenovo Chromebook. And maybe it has a MediaTek chip. Maybe it's got that new Companion. I can't confirm or deny. I'm just saying we could speculate what might be inside this machine right here that I will be talking about on my channel very, very soon. Maybe it is the competitive example I've been dying to see since Qualcomm brought out their ARM chips for Windows machines. Chromebooks have always had some kind of option with low power ARM chips. But what if we just put a really powerful ARM chip in a Chromebook? And we charged like kind of middle PC prices with a pretty nice OLED touchscreen and nice enough speakers. And the best rated battery life of any Chromebook that I think has ever been manufactured. because I think Apple proved us ARM nerds right that, yeah, I mean, we want a fluid, performant machine, but it doesn't matter to us if it gets like 3 hours when it's unplugged. But what if you could just run this for like 10 hours of really hard work? Like, what if I'm editing, batch processing raw photos, and the laptop says, yeah, if you use me at this performance level, you could run me for 7 hours of batch processing high resolution raw photos from a Sony mirrorless. Maybe that's the kind of conversation we're going to have really soon. Who knows? It could happen. Let me take I got one last sip of coffee here, and then we gotta close this show out. You know what's hilarious? The machinery that they're running in conjunction with actually stomping on our roof and hammering in ceiling roof tiles just turned off. I believe the roofers are getting ready to take a lunch break, just as I'm getting ready to finish the show. So thank you everybody who's stuck with this podcast, and especially folks on the audio replay. There's no way around it. You're going to hear some thumping and banging and hammering, but it is nice to know that the majority of the loudest part of this is done now that I'm done with my show. Hold on, I wanted to see. JGJ is telling Nick you could go with Linux, but again, if we're talking about Intel, we want some kind of alternative to Intel. I'm very surprised that AMD didn't make a bigger splash in Chromebooks. I really felt like that would have been an easy tangent for AMD's chip business. Oh, Nick Gay, Samsung is defending their batteries with they are rated for 2,000 charging cycles versus 1,000 for the OnePlus 13. I need to do research on this topic. I really want to see the math of which lasts longer. So you're like, yeah, 2,000 charging cycles, sure, but you need to charge more frequently, and you also need to run the battery hotter for longer. So it's one of those like feel good numbers. We're going to give you 12 years of software support, but your phone's going to fall apart in 4 years. Did you really get the benefit? You're going to say, oh, you're going to get 2,000 charge cycles. And then the only way to test that is to run the phone 2,000 charge cycles. And if you can find the researcher that's doing that, let me know. From Michael C. It's really easy for these creators that get a free flight to New York City and a free $2,200 phone to get over the removal of the S Pen. They still have their old foldable. Consumers have to trade their phones in. Like, yeah, I'm definitely, sort of having to temper, when I get a fancy new tablet and I'm really excited about it and like, hey guys, this is really cool. I'm still trying desperately to hold on to that idea that like this could be a $900 purchase for someone, right? The whole thing is like, yeah, there are affiliate links on my videos, but I'm not sitting there like, hey guys, the pre-sale's going, you should click on my affiliate link in every social media post. And there's something about Samsung that just draws out you don't really care. I'm only here to try and convince you to spend your money on my link. You don't care if the phone is really better or not, right, Samsung nerd? It's a Samsung. You're gonna buy it. And that's the cynicism that really kills my soul. Because, like, if Samsung actually faced any kind of scrutiny or any kind of criticism, they'd probably be forced to make better products. But instead, we're playing this game of, well, you're definitely going to buy it if you're an Android fan, right? And that's just so gross to me. Like, I need to go and take a shower. Nick Gay, yes, Juan, I am planning on buying the Lenovo Chromebook Plus 14. If you don't want Intel, I'm just saying. It's so good. Yeah, and Nick is also saying my main laptop recommendations are Chromebooks, the M1 and M2 series MacBooks, and Windows on ARM last. Uh, I mean, again, I can't tell you, it has been so exciting using my Windows on ARM Surface laptop. It just got support for Focusrite. Focusrite interfaces, they were so slow to put out compatible drivers, but we just got a beta, and now I can set up my laptop in the exact same configuration as my desktop, and almost everything I need to do, with the exception of video rendering, is faster on my laptop, where it uses a tiny fraction of the amount of electricity. And I'm still using my recording interface, my speakers. I've got that Focusrite ASIO. I've got full support for all of my audio editing, video editing. Everything is great. The only thing it can't do as well as my massive workstation is render the video in DaVinci Resolve. So I'm doing this really silly thing where I'm doing all the editing, and then I save the project file and re-import it on the desktop, and then just go and render. It is so much nicer. I love it. So good. From Colin Murphy. Hey, I'm looking forward to next week's reviews of vacuum cleaners specifically for ceiling debris. Let me tell you, we've had a few thuds that have like shook dust off of stuff, and it is so scary when you live in an earthquake-prone state and you feel like them drop equipment on the roof and it shakes the entire structure. And you're like, is that an earthquake? No. No, that shook really bad, but it was just the workers on our roof. Let me get this out of the way there. So, folks, so much to talk about. I've got a folding phone here. I've got that Vivo X200 Ultra. That video is out. I can finally wrap up my Vivo X200 FE. This is an adorable little phone. And I think I'm very cynical about FE branded devices, but when your FE has a Dimensity 9300 in it, I can be a little bit more forgiving. That's pretty nice chip to have in a phone. I'm doing a follow-up on the OnePlus Pad 2. I might be getting this really cool backpack cooler just to kind of go along with some of my battery tech and solar power videos and reviews. Just lots to follow up on, and we're kind of pushing through summer here. We're going to be getting into August and wrapping summer up, and I'm finding more fun in some of these conversations. So it's just been really nice to kind of circle this back around and be like, hey, maybe everything doesn't suck. So stay tuned. Follow up on the YouTube channel. I just accidentally smashed my keyboard, and that could have just ended the whole podcast right there. Stay tuned on my YouTube channel. The video's coming out. Stay tuned on the Patreon for first looks at the videos and articles that I've been writing and producing. And then also check out somegadgetguy.com, where apparently earbud reviews are really hot on somegadgetguy.com. They're pulling tons of traffic right now. So like tens and tens of views. So I'm just going to put a pin in it. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for stuff to come. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel, hopefully with less construction noise. Be safe. Take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of others and be the amazing tech neighbor I know you can be. I love you all. I'll catch you back.